At 2 p.m. on the 16th of September 2021, something very strange happened at the White House. During a speech, US President Joe Biden spoke some magic words that put almost everyone who heard them under a spell. He was speaking about wealth inequality in the United States, talking about how it was simply not fair. He blamed the problem on the country's billionaires, saying it was time for them to pay their fair share, and that it was their fault this problem existed in the first place, because they were the ones hoarding most of the nation's money. This magic spell caused almost everyone who heard it to believe these words. But like almost all magic, it wasn't really a spell. In reality, it was nothing more than a simple illusion. An illusion that's been mastered by almost every single government on our planet. And like all illusions, it's designed to hide something. To discover what this is, we need to take a close look at the magician and reveal the dark truths that the illusion is trying to hide. Wealth inequality is a really big problem, and it does seem to have gotten worse over the last decade. It's understandable that people are really annoyed at the people that have millions and billions of dollars because it seems easy to justify that they are the ones to blame for all of these problems with wealth inequality. It makes sense that people with the most are the ones taking away from the people with the least. But what if I told you that there is a sneaky little thief that is responsible for all of this wealth inequality? So I do want to shed some light on this sneaky little thief, and also later on in the video, I want to talk about who is responsible for allowing this little thief to actually work. A little over 2 years ago, a massive health crisis changed the face of our world and seriously damaged our economy. But this economic fallout of the crisis seemed to favor a tiny group of people in our society, while at the same time screwing over almost everyone else. Within just 1 year after the world shut down in 2020, planet Earth experienced the biggest transfer of wealth in history. Workers around the world lost a collective total of $3.7 trillion in wealth, while at the same time, the world's billionaires collectively became $3.9 trillion richer. This caused a lot of people to label this wealth transfer as economic theft that was being perpetuated by the richest among us in society. An article sharing these views went viral, being shared by millions of people in the world. But the truth is, this economic thief isn't actually the rich. The real thief is inflation. And this is how it steals money from directly under your nose without you even knowing, and then making the rich so much richer. During times of crisis, people tend to reduce their spending. When times are bad, we mostly want to save our cash and only spend it on the necessities in life. However, holding back on spending is bad for the economy because the economy depends on money continuing to flow within the system. So to encourage people to spend, your government simply prints more money. And because times have been so bad over the last 2 years, many nations have created more new money during this time than any other time in history. But every single time they do this, you become poorer. And here is why. Let's say there's $100 in total money that exists in our economy, but during a crisis, your government prints another 10, adding that to the money supply. There's now 110. The money supply has grown by 10%. But the thing is, the economy hasn't become 10% bigger. The same amount of goods and services still exist as before, but now there's more money trying to buy these goods and services. And when that happens, each dollar that exists loses some value, which in turn makes everything around you cost more. This is inflation in action, and economist Milton Friedman summed up this concept the best. Simply put, he said inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. In reality, this is how inflation is stealing from you. Now, it's not directly stealing your money, but it is making your money worth less, meaning you can buy less stuff over time. And you would think that inflation is affecting everybody equally, but it actually isn't at all. Inflation is a very rigged game because what is bad for you is actually very good for the people at the top. If you're only living paycheck to paycheck or only have minimal savings in your bank account, inflation is slowly robbing your money of value over time. Right now, inflation in the United States is almost at 9%. This means if you put $10,000 in a bank account a year ago, it's actually worth almost 9% less than it was before, simply because everything around you is now 9% more expensive. But this isn't the same for the rich. Yes, rich people have money, but they also have assets, things like houses, land, stocks, businesses, artwork, and gold. And when inflation goes up, so generally does the value of these assets along with the cost of goods and services. But where they really win is that most of the time time, the value of the assets actually increases much more than inflation. This is because as cash loses its value, more and more people get their money out of cash to buy real assets as protection against inflation. This causes more competition and demand for assets like real estate and further drives up their prices. And the real world effects of this are sometimes staggering. In Australia, for example, inflation was around 6% over the last 12 months, but at the same time, the average price of real estate increased by almost 25%. In short, the rules of inflation are rigged in order to favor the rich and screw over the poor, because the value of assets goes up much more than the rate of inflation, and at the same time, it's destroying the value of cash savings or someone's salary. And as the rich are much more likely to hold assets, they are the ones benefiting from this situation. This entire event can be summed up in 2 sentences. If you don't own assets, inflation makes you poorer. If you own a lot of assets, inflation makes you richer. But who is responsible for creating the rules of this rigged game that favor the rich? And in order for us to answer that question, we have to talk about the magician that I mentioned at the start of the video. Before I do that, I do want to thank today's sponsor, and that is Masterworks. In times of inflation, billionaire Ray Dalio believes in 3 simple words: cash is trash. So where might be a better option for you to hold your cash instead? Well, for me, one of the best options is fine art. At certain points in history, when inflation has been above 3%, contemporary fine art has outperformed the S&P by more than 6 times and gold by more than 10 times. And the last time inflation was this bad, blue chip art appreciated by a whopping 130%. Now, obviously not everybody has $10 million that they can drop on their own Banksy art. However, when you invest with Masterworks, you don't have to. Masterworks buys high-end pieces of art, securitizes them, and allows its members to buy into them with shares, meaning almost anyone can get into this booming market at a price that best suits you. And since joining Masterworks, I've already personally invested in a Banksy and a Picasso, the 2 pieces you can see on your screen right now. It is super easy to sign up, and with Masterworks, generally there is a waitlist that you have to join. However, by clicking the link in the description, you will skip that queue, so you can start your investing journey in fine art today with just a few simple clicks. As wealth inequality has become more of a problem over the last few years, politicians around the world have spoken out about how they aim to solve this problem. In Canada, Justin Trudeau has blamed digital giants for the extreme wealth inequality his country has been experiencing. In Ireland, the president spoke about how human beings cannot flourish in places where there is a great division of wealth. And I've already mentioned Joe Biden's speech putting crosshairs on the richest people in society for creating this massive problem. These are just 3 among many world leaders and politicians who have criticized those with the most wealth for creating this problem. But here is the thing. It is these world leaders that are pointing fingers, blaming others for the wealth inequality that are responsible for all of this. Because it's the ruling political class of any nation that makes inflation possible by allowing printing of money to happen in the first place. When the economy is struggling, printing money can help to stimulate the flow of money. More money means more people out there spending it. This temporarily stabilizes the economy, which is why it's such a common tactic used by governments all around the world. But it's only a temporary solution that is inevitably going to cause a bigger problem: inflation. It's like putting duct tape over a crack in a dam wall. The dam is eventually going to burst. The tape does nothing but gives us a false sense of security for a short period of time. The burst is inevitable, and by delaying it, it just makes the end result worse than it would have been before. Now, I'm not saying that billionaires are not to blame for any of this wealth inequality. There are a lot of greedy billionaires that will use others for their own personal gain. And even worse, there are billionaires that lobby governments in order to pass laws that are going to favor them. But here is the truth, and it's sometimes very hard to swallow. Blaming billionaires for the problem of wealth inequality is like blaming a race car driver for being given a car that's much faster than everyone else is driving. He doesn't own the car, and it's not his racetrack. He's just playing the game by the rules he's been given. If you think the race is unfair, you should be getting angry at the people who gave him the faster car in the first place and put everyone else at a disadvantage. Or, to put it another way, don't hate the player, hate the game. In so many ways, the financial game that we're all playing is seriously broken, and it doesn't make it any better when politicians of all nations print money like crazy, which doesn't solve the underlying problem at all. They know this, they just don't want you to be blaming them for any of the damages that are being done later on down the line, and they want you instead to point the finger at a much easier target. The next time you hear a politician blaming billionaires for creating wealth inequality, instead see their words for what they are: a spell an illusion, or misdirection. They're simply trying to redirect your anger at someone they want you to believe is the source of the problem, when instead the real culprits have been standing in front of you all along. Their words might be saying blame billionaires, but really what you should be hearing them say is,
how about a magic trick?
Sometimes it is fun to believe in magic, but just remember this: all magic tricks are built on some kind of deception. Just don't let the magician play you for a fool. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found value in this video. If you did, make sure that you like, comment, subscribe. We would love to have you here. We also have an amazing newsletter that so many people rave about. You really have to check it out for yourself. Link in bio to find out more. And lastly, we currently have 30% off our pre-sale of a brand new course, The Manual, which is teaching you so much about how to become extra financially free. So if you want to find out more, there is a link in the bio, and I will see you in the next one.